Is Mehdi there?
Yes, I'm here, Catherine. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, excellent. Yes, I can.
Where are you?
How are you? I'm in North Africa right now.
Ah, I thought you were going to be in France. I just came from four of the most wonderful weeks of my life in France.
Brilliant. In the south of France, I bet, right?
Well, actually, I was in Chartres in Brittany, and then I went to the south of France.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, Brittany is very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But yeah. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Algeria.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so I was in Coulier, so I was definitely in the Mediterranean part.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, I'm glad you had nice holidays.
Well, welcome. Now, I know you've been on the stream before. I'm a newbie, and you're experienced.
Oh, I don't know if I'm experienced. Well, I was listening. I was really happy to hear you say many things regarding. You were talking about Building 7, right? When you said we're saying people shouldn't be working in buildings,
right?
That have okay, yeah.
Although if you look at the government securities dealers that were in the Twin Towers, I would include those as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Well, that building didn't have any reason to collapse, really. You know, you could maybe argue with the people who I don't know, who don't have technical background or anything about the Twin Towers, but Building 7, you know, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you how I was. Let me take you way into the past, and it gets back to the power of the kind of documentation that WikiLeaks has provided. My company was doing due diligence on mortgage loans that were being sold out of the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the 90s. And there had been tremendous fraud. The Region 6, the federal region at that time was Region 6, and both Texas and Arkansas, so both the Bushes and the Clintons were in Region 6. And we were supposed to go pick up those documents and auction them off. And I had been told that the fraud was just outrageous. Yeah. And these are all defaulted mortgages. And I remember when I sent we sent an accounting firm in to get the files, and we scheduled them. And I said, you know, I wonder how this is going to work. I'm a little bit nervous about this. And then a week or so before they could go pick it up, bam, the building blows up and all the files with it.
There you go. Problem solved, right?
Right. So
you were talking with Alistair earlier about the $21 trillion, right? It's a massive amount. I mean, even $21,000 is a big amount for the random Joe or Jane, right? But 21 trillion is like 1 million times that. And yeah, people can't understand how so much money just disappeared. Didn't disappear in some pockets, right? We don't know which pockets exactly. But you're a finance specialist, so you work with the government, so you got to see things from the inside, right?
Right. And you know what you need to do is you need the ability to run very tight control over knowledge management. In other words, I call it the data beast. You need to have bureaucracies who are working with documents, and you need to keep very tight central control over those documents, not just, because you need people in silo A to not connect the dots to silo B. Part of the problem is you've got all these operations, and it's imperative that they not be able to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And when someone like WikiLeaks lets the documents fly, then suddenly, you have you have a serious problem, because your operation is one where your official reality is getting further and further away from reality, and that requires tighter and tighter controls. You know, when we used to publish, whenever we would publish money about finding more money going missing from the federal government, we would immediately see fights break out. And I used to always say that everybody was asking for a bigger bonus because they hadn't realized that they were helping to steal so much money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And like you say, in the government, I think in finance, it's the same as in intelligence agencies. They compartmentalize everything so that you cannot connect the dots. So the only solution then outlets like Wikileaks, which can get the information out, and you get finally to connect the dots. Otherwise, yeah. So yeah, my question was because you have these $21 trillion. Actually, it may be more, right? but 21 trillion is already a big amount. Yes,
if you look at the bailouts gifted or loaned 24 to 27 trillion. And then the money that's missing from the federal government is 21 trillion. And there's some this and that, some other stuff. But my estimate is you're talking since fiscal 1995, at least $50 trillion.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. And the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury debt is 21 or 22 trillion, right? The public debt.
Right. The public debt is, or the Treasury security public debt is 21 trillion. Then you have, you know, other kinds of securities and credit and other pension fund liabilities. So liability just goes to a higher number. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this should show Americans, because they are the first ones who are impacted by this. How much does secrecy cost to them? Because on the one side we have people who have managed to steal 21 trillion or more, and on the other hand, you have more and more Americans living in their cars and having 3 jobs, but still not being able to make ends meet at the end of the month, and so on. So I think if yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you a little secret. In the 90s, when relational databases first became available, we built a data simulation of the U.S. economy bottom up, so that you could look at it by county. So America's 3,100 counties. So what we said is, if we really practice democracy in markets and we're free to, we were free to work in a world where Austrian economics applied, how much wealth could we create? And I took my smartest guy, at a PhD from MIT, and I told him to go figure it out. He came back, and I looked at the number, and I said, Henry, that's too big. You have to be wrong. So I made him go back 6 times. And finally, I realized, okay, I've got to take the weekend and go through these numbers. What I discovered was, let me say it this way, the oppression and the destruction of productivity that comes from secret is so monstrous, it's so big, that no one would believe me if I told you. Exactly. So what I will tell you is that the wealth on this planet is 1% of what it could be if we had a financial system that aligned with life. Yeah. So it is remarkably easy conceptually to reconfigure the economy so that you can make money healing the environment, so that you can make money ending poverty, so that you can make money doing all of these things. So we could end poverty from 9 to 5 during the week, make a lot of money doing it, and then go to Collier and paint or play on the beach, for the other 2 days. So the wealth potential is enormous. And the question I have is, why in the world we have a secret governance system on planet Earth? Why are we destroying the vast majority of our wealth to keep everything secret?
Well, I'll tell you what I think right now. I mean, after thinking about this, of course, it's a huge problem. And like you say, it's I mean, even the planet, it's so big and so, but even the planet is screwed up right now. I mean, you can see it, right? That with climate change and everything's polluted basically. So we managed to destroy even the planet. And all of this because of the externalities you're talking about, meaning people are making money at the detriment of the planet, meaning they're making money, but they're destroying the planet, and they're not paying for it, right? So that's why the planet is so destroyed right now. And I think to understand why we got here, and this is my understanding at the moment right now so far. It's that it goes back to the to the origins, you could say, of the United States, which is a greedy European bourgeoisie, which went, abroad looking for easy wealth to acquire, right? And basically, the U.S. was built on that. And you were saying earlier that you believe that in your whole lifetime, the U.S., at least the U.S. has been a fascist state. I totally agree. And I think it goes way beyond that. It goes to the origin of the United States. What was the United States founded upon at the beginning? It was founded upon the colonization of a continent where people were living in harmony, you could say, with nature. And they were virtually all wiped out, and they were replaced with an industrialized civilization. But unfortunately, it's an industrialization, a civilization which serves just a few. And we are exactly at the same point, meaning there's a small number of people who are getting all the wealth that is being produced by everybody else. So I think if you go to the origin of the United States, and actually you could go back to Europe, to imperialism, basically. That's what they did in Africa, in Asia, and so on. I think it's the greedy minority, the greedy 1%, the greedy bourgeoisie, which went abroad looking for easy wealth to make, to the detriment of everybody else, including the environment. This is my understanding, at least right now.
So that has not been my experience. In my experience, right now we have a culture globally which is increasingly what I would call hyper-materialist. But my initial experience with the people who ran the United States was that they were not hyper-materialistic. In other words, they were not primarily motivated by greed. Now, they were very ruthless about understanding and managing natural resources. So I'm not trying to say that they were Pollyanna, but they were not hyper-materialist, and they ran things very strategically, and the pressure on them and the stress on them was enormous. In other words, they were always afraid, and they were always more or less prisoners of the system. And the question is why?
Well, yes, exactly. I'm not talking about those people. I think the greedy people who are controlling almost everything are beyond those people. You don't get to see them, but they control the system because they control key people, they control key institutions, like banks. I mean, when banks were starting to have more and more power, it was about 1 century ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the specialist in finance. There was it Wilson or another U.S. president who warned about
Wilson was the president who made the mistake.
Oh, okay. But there was one U.S. president who said, okay, we have this huge problem, which is the rising power of banks, and we're going to pay for it very dearly in a few decades or
right.
So basically that's what's happening. And basically it always goes back to money, to control, and to power. The people who have the money, who have a lot of money, they can always find someone who's corruptible, or they can pay to get rid of them, right? We see that every day.
So I'm going to tell you my red button story. Have you ever heard my red button story?
No.
Okay, I'm going to tell you my red button story.
Yes.
I was speaking in the year 2000 to a group of people called Spiritual Frontier Foundations. They have a conference once a year to talk about how to evolve our society spiritually. They're very, very well educated, very nice people. And I've been asked by a friend to give them a speech called How the Money Works on Organized Crime. And it was meant to be a light and funny description of Washington and Wall Street's dependency on narco dollars and other money laundering. So I'm in the middle of the speech, and I'm talking about Gary Webb's Dark Alliance and the congressional testimony about intelligence agency dealing drugs into South Central LA. And at the time of the testimony, which was 1998, the Department of Justice had told a reporter I was working with that the U.S. economy launders $500 billion to $1 trillion of all illegal monies. So the number is much bigger now with financial fraud. But then, So the U.S. was at the time was the global leader and is always competing with other financial centers around the world. So this is a major global competition between all financial centers.
Exactly.
So I said to this wonderful group of spiritually evolved people, what would happen if we stopped being the leader in global illegal cash flows? So we had a little discussion. There were about 100 people, and they said, well, you know, we'd have trouble financing the government deficit. And so our government checks might stop. And, you know, that money would go to London or Zurich or Hong Kong, and the New York Stock Exchange might go down. And I said, okay, well, let's pretend there's a big red button up here on the lectern. And if you push that button, you can stop all hard narcotics trafficking in your county, your community, your town tomorrow, thus offending the people who control $500 billion to $1 trillion a year of all dirty money. But you can push the button, you can stop it right now. Who here will push the button? And out of 100 people who's committed to spiritual evolution of our society, guess how many would push the button?
0.
One. If I had voted, it would have been 2. And I said, why would you not push the button? And they said, we don't want our taxes to go up. We don't want our government checks to stop. We don't want our funds to go down in value.
Well, they're trapped inside the matrix, I call that. You know, they're still inside the matrix, and they're trapped inside the matrix, and they see their interest in the continuity.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Right now, it's 8:50 here in Central Europe. We're going to elect you president of the United States. Okay? You should see the look on your face. So you're in the Oval Office. Your Treasury Secretary, your political Karl Rove comes into you and he says, you know, Mr. President, you know what? Everybody in America, they just spent $2 billion to get you elected. They all want their check. They want their housing subsidy. They want their government contract. They want their check. So your Secretary of Treasury turns to you and says, well, you better be nice to the people who control $500 billion to $1 trillion a year of all illegal revenues and the accumulated capital. Okay, so now if the American people, if 99% of the most spiritually evolved people in America don't want you to push the red button, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I know that fact, but I mean, it doesn't change the problem and the origin of the problem. It's just the solution.
Well, but let me ask you something. What would you do if you were president?
Oh, I'm not interested in being president. That's one thing. Not at all. No, I think it's not at all about one person. I think it has to be, the change has to come from at least the majority, right. Not everybody. I think people focus too much on individuals. For me, the enemy it's not Trump or Hillary or Obama or Macron or anybody else. It's a system, and more specifically, it's an ideology.
So how do we get the general population to say, I want to push the red button?
Well, I don't think that the red button would be something I would like to do, like stopping in a very brutal fashion everything, right?
Right.
But I think the solution is like Julian Assange says, it's to educate, to inform, and
right.
especially to give people high value information, which is always secret information, right? That's the highest value information. And that's what Wikileaks does. And I think with time, if outlets like Wikileaks continue doing the fantastic work, I think people will get to understand more and more how the world works. Where is their true interest, really? Because they're constantly brainwashed by mainstream media, which basically tells them, oh, you have to vote for Macron because he's so fantastic and young, and he was working as a banker at Rothschild, so he will fix the economy just like that, and so on. So they're sent the wrong signals and brainwashed, and most people just swallow all these fake news and fake information and propaganda. So yeah, we have to fight all those lies with like true information. And it will take a very long time. I'm not kidding myself. I think the problem will be fixed long after I'll be gone myself. So I don't think it's something that will be fixed in our time, really. And I'm just trying to be realistic. You know how big the problem is. yeah, how tough it's going to be to solve it.
So this week and this month, how do we affect a turn in the British and American government's position on Julian Assange? I'd like to see him get out.
Yeah, well, I think some people want to pressure Ecuador. Some people want to pressure the UK. Personally, I always try to understand what is the root cause of the problem, right? And the root cause lies in the US government. So I think the solution will come from pressuring the US government. And it has started already with small protests outside of US embassies and outside of the White House. And I think we should continue doing that and scaling up, increasing the protest, the size of the protest and the frequency of the protest. Bring light, because they hate that, they hate the tension. Many embassies around, US embassies around the world are like in places where you cannot even get close to it. They're so afraid. They know that people hate them, right? The barriers and security. If people really love the US, would you have all this security, really? No. So I think just protesting next to those places will already bring attention to them, bring media attention, bring pressure to them, because they absolutely hate attention. It's like they are there, but they don't want to look like they're there. Okay, they project their power, but in secrecy, right?
I'll tell you a very funny story.
Yes, go ahead.
When I was Assistant Secretary of Housing, there was a group of housing activists who very rightly were furious about what was going on with churning the foreclosure properties in Chicago. And the secretary, had been very gracious in listening, but wasn't doing anything. And so his daughter was expected to get married at their house one weekend, and they decided they would they would block his driveway. And sure enough, they got everything they asked for. It was quite remarkable.
There you go. Yeah. So it's so easy. You would put me at the position of president, I would probably act like that. That's why it's very important to have those checks and balances, but real ones, right? Like Julian says, any one of us could be, a bastard, right? If we get enough power and enough money, we would probably act like, a-holes, right? So,
right.
It's not about persons, it's not about individuals. It's about a governance, good governance, and checks and balances and constant controls. And Wikileaks is absolutely part of this, and maybe the most important part, because if you rely on one branch of democracy, which is supposed to be independent from another one, to remain independent, this is just speculation. And whereas when you have an organization like Wikileaks, with a leader like Julian Assange, who has showed repeatedly that he is absolutely independent, he has a very high integrity, he's highly courageous, he's not afraid. He has showed it multiple times. Now he could very easily negotiate his safety in exchange for a promise to never publish again and shut down WikiLeaks and so on. He could have done this at any point in the last 8 years. He didn't do it. So this is continuing evidence to his very, very high standards of integrity. And I would trust WikiLeaks a lot more than I would trust an equivalent of the DOJ or the police or any other branch of the government or of the state, not just the government.
Well, there's no doubt that the record, the record,
how I see things, but.
Yeah, the record of integrity has been remarkable. When did you first learn about WikiLeaks?
Well, it was in 2010. Probably I had heard about the collateral murder video first, but then I got involved from the moment Julian was arrested. That's when I got really angry and really pissed, and I understood more or less what was going on, that this guy was like very important and they wanted his head on the plate. And I said, no effing way, not just like that. yeah, since then I've been trying to support WikiLeaks and Julian, and yeah, as long as I can, I'll be doing it and try to be a pain in the ass of the powerful, right?
So, so who is joining next? We're almost on the hour.
It will be Mark Sleboda. I don't know if he's ready yet or not, but yeah, it will be Mark, who has been on the vigil, I believe, several times already. Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, so it's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's been a pleasure to join.
Thank you, Catherine.
My prayers are with everybody
pleasure.
on the panel and with Susie, and most of all with Julian Assange and his team at WikiLeaks. God bless you.
Okay, thank you very much, Catherine. You take care.